So I guess that you figured out by now that a red herring is really about misdirection. So congratulations on finding your way to another one of my unlisted videos. So there's a project that I want to show you, and it's in this case. But I don't want it to become misinterpreted, so I've hidden this video and I'm giving you this disclaimer. I don't want you to get the impression that I'm advocating anything by showing this to you. I'm kind of sick of being misunderstood, so I want to be explicit. This video is about having an appreciation of form, and it's not really about promoting what the object is used for. What we're looking at here is a giant chunk of marble, courtesy of Wikipedia. Marble is a metamorphic rock, which means that it started out as something else like limestone. But tremendous heat and pressure over time changed the limestone into what we know and recognize as marble. The most desirable marbles are these bright white types like this, and it's very common to see these sort of grayish streaks inside the marble, which are probably impurities that were trapped in there during the formation process. Something like clay or organic material that gets trapped in there becomes this sort of grayish streak that has pretty unpredictable properties, so try to avoid this when you're looking for a block of marble to work with. I found that I liked working with this one the best because it had the highest density. You can check something's density by just remembering that density equals mass divided by volume. It's how much stuff is in how much space. So if you weigh the block and divide it by how much water it displaces when you put it into something, you can determine its density. I've made quite a few different things out of marble in my life, and it probably isn't as difficult to work as you may think. But this video is about making one thing in particular. Pipe making has been around for about as long as man's ability to manipulate fire, and over history, some cultures have developed it into quite an art form. The only reason that I can even compete with the artisans of the past is because I have an advantage. I have a cheap wet saw. It's amazing what you can make with one of these. I've modified mine extensively, but it really is the cheapest one made. Using this tool is nothing like a table saw, so you only have to show it a little teeny bit of respect to avoid getting hurt. All of the drilling should be done underwater using a masonry bit. I go really slow, constantly taking it out to check and see that my two holes line up perfectly. Once the two holes are connected, I use one of these carborundum things to make the bowl. This part goes surprisingly fast, but it should also be done underwater. The rest is sculpture. This is the motion that I make to round the outside. Remember, this is not a table saw, so it's really not that unsafe to do this. In fact, you can touch the blade while it's spinning, just so long as you don't apply pressure. Also, kickback doesn't exist here, because the saw really doesn't have that much power. Sanding takes forever. It's really important to have an aggressive sandpaper. This slideshow is a little bit misleading, because the process is really a cycling between the wet saw, then to the disc sander, and then to the drum sander, over and over and over again. You have to go through a lot of trouble to get it to this stage where it's kind of four-sided, but it's worth the hassle because it's surprisingly simple to smooth these edges over and still maintain a symmetry on both halves. So you can essentially use judgment to finish it off from this point. Use the wet saw to knock the corner down, and then slowly sand using the other methods that I've already showed you. Always focusing on symmetry. Since this channel is primarily about woodworking, I'll talk about this box in a little bit, but first let's take a look at the finished pipes. By this point, the squareness to their shape is all but gone. But the trickiest part of all with working marble is getting this high gloss shine to it. It takes quite a while. The sanding process is tedious, to say the least. Well, I've been playing around with the lighting in here for the last 20 minutes and I just can't seem to get it right. White objects are always the hardest to film, and it just seems like they lose something in translation to video. You'll just have to take my word for it when I say that it really does have a beautiful finish. Now, if you're used to sanding wood, you can get away with, I don't know, starting out with about 100 grit and then moving down to 220 and then calling it a day. But with marble, it really doesn't work that way. You can't skip any steps. Okay, let there be normal, well, relatively normal light. You know, lighting is one of the, no, not one of the, it probably is the most difficult part about filming a video. The difference between a pleasant lighting and this is just one light bulb. It takes a lot of patience and trial and error to work it out, but I'm doing the best that I can for you. But in order for me to get the lighting correct on that last shot, I had to move to the other side, which is why you can see this shadow here. It's not normally there. Usually I do staging from the other side of the table saw. Yes, this lighting is very unpleasant. But while I have this set up, I want to show you which grades of sandpaper that I use to sand marble. I start out with 80, 100, and 220. Then I go to wet sanding, where I use 320, 400, 600, 800, 1000, and 2000. And then when I'm all done with that, I put a nice coat of beeswax on the finished pipe. The beeswax acts as a sealant, and I put it on with a heat gun, and then when that's cool, I buff it all smooth. And that's all you have to do to make a marble pipe. There we go. I think the lighting is much nicer from this angle. Well, this side of the garage anyways. Well, let's talk about this box and get this series over with so I can cut my losses, because I have a sneaking suspicion that this whole red herring / marble pipe thing is not going to go over so well. Anyhow, the box is lined with velvet that's on foam rubber, and the box itself is made from cedar closet liner. That's my sick sense of humor. But what is interesting is this sort of overlap joint that I put on this material, which the stock is just regular 2x4. And you can see that the way the overlap works, it makes the exterior molding look like it's just a thin strip that runs the perimeter. But in fact, it's a rather thick piece of wood. But anytime you get the chance to use aromatic cedar for a box like this, I highly recommend it, because the smell is just phenomenal. Now don't forget to sign in by leaving me a comment so that I know who found this. And I hope you enjoyed. This is Pocket 83 signing off, and if you're hearing this, you are the resistance.